Hi, I'm Skyshark, and this episode I will be making the Master Sword from Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. It's the broken one. I cut out my blueprint out of 10mm high density foam 2 times. Then I dremeled in a slit in both of them with a Dremel to make some room for a fiberglass rod. This way I know the prop will be sturdy. I also made a slit in 2 half-round dowels to fit the fiberglass rod and make a handle. Then I covered those dowels with a PVC pipe just to give it the right size, but also to make it look more finished. Of course, every blade has an edge, so I used my Dremel to do this as well. You can already recognize the shape in it, but it's still missing a lot of detail. So next thing I'm gonna do is cut out these details and Dremel all of them separate and then glue them on here. I cut out the details, all 16 of them, in 7mm high density foam and Dremeled every separate piece. This took a very long time. Of course I could also just Dremel in the details, I've seen many people do that and that's perfectly fine, but I think it will be very hard to Dremel all that, so I'm gonna do it all separately and then just glue it on. The biggest danger here is that I Dremel them too much and they become too small to glue on the handle, but I was lucky and they turned out fine. Some anomalies did occur, but those were fixable later on. Alright, so we are done gluing on all these details and I think it looks really good. The details are very refined and that's what I wanted. I still think that by Dremeling it in the crossguard itself, I would have had a really bad time. So I'm glad I chose this method. As you know, this blade is pretty messed up at the bottom, so I used my Dremel to carve out most of it with a bit I've never used before and it worked out just fine. It's always crazy to me how long the sanding takes in real life compared to in video. Like you'll see it for like 10 seconds and I'll be doing this for like 2 days in a row. So now I have come to the biggest problem that I knew would happen because I decided to make the thing in one piece. And that's this part over here. Because now my Dremel won't reach it. But I have a solution for that. Sometimes it may happen that your prop has certain nooks and crannies that your Dremel just can't reach. So here's a quick tip to work around that. I just grab a small stick and some sanding paper, glue the sanding paper to the stick and start sanding. This may take a bit longer than with a Dremel, but you won't damage the prop and you'll be able to access the more impractical places. Finally, I just heat seal the sanded area to finish it off and I'm done. Of course, I know you could also just use a nail file, but I don't have those, so I just had to use what I had. Alright, so I have sanded most of it. I have done the thing with the stick, I have heat sealed it and I think it looks quite good. But now comes my favorite part and that is the handle. I don't like making handles because you have to work with foam around a 3D and round object and it's just not fun to do because you end up with seams and it's annoying as hell. But it has to be done and there are 2 ways to do this. I can make patterns and then just start shaping foam in the ways that I need it. Or I can cut out foam, stack it and Dremel out the shape that I need. And I think I will go with that because I really don't feel like making new patterns. I have this thing that's literally made for round things, so let's go. I used this tool to cut out the perfect round EVA foam pieces. This made the whole thing a lot easier. I cut out the same donut looking pieces a few times and glued those on top of each other. Then I made my markings to know where I wanted to Dremel and cut off some excess foam. Then I started my Dremeling and this took a long time. I did the same thing for the shape on the pommel. Lastly, I had to add some details out of 2mm EVA foam like the gem and the Triforce emblem. I had to make those a couple of times because it's very easy to fumble when making foam details that are that small. Remember the trick with the stick? Turns out I had to cover it with EVA foam anyway, so it didn't matter. That's cosplay for you. Finally, I sanded the handle so that the glue would stick better and I added some foam dowels as a wrapping. I took some creative liberties here, but I think it looks just fine. And that concludes the foam build. In general, I'm pretty happy with it. I do think the handle is a bit too short, but I don't think it's that big of a deal. I can still hold it. It's time to prime the whole thing so that I can start painting. For this I'm gonna use Flex Bond. Priming is very important before painting your prop. Without it, your EVA foam would suck in most of the paint and the result would just look like painted foam. I'm using Flex Bond as a primer since I know this will make my paint job shine more. Just apply it with a good brush and a little bit of water and really take your time. Flex Bond dries pretty quickly, so if you have some bubbles forming because of the water or thick spots, those will stay there forever if you don't watch out. To avoid that, again, take your time and don't use too much. If it all starts to clutter, you can dampen your brush and just brush them away. Sometimes I even just use a wet finger to fix some of the edges. So, we're done priming. I gave it around 3 layers. I think it's pretty solid. You can see most of the brush strokes, so I'm really happy with it. I'm gonna paint the whole thing with Cos paints mostly, because Cos paints it's metallic paint. We have it in the shop here as well, so we'll link in the description for that. With this container alone, I can probably paint 20 of these swords because it has a very high coverage, so it's a really amazing paint for cosplay. So that's what I'm gonna use. I'm gonna start with pure silver and just start covering the whole sword, and then we work from there. I gave the entire prop a base layer of pure silver Cos paint. Then I applied some royal blue to the handle. I combined it with the sapphire blue because I wanted to create a contrast in those shapes. I used emerald green for the handle wrapping. This part sucked to paint. The weathered side of the blade I painted with Panther Black Cos paint. I used the same paint to add the shading and to do some weathering on the prop later on. The blade also has some moss on it. I know I could just paint it on, but I wanted to try something different. So I added Flex Bond on top of the parts where the moss should go and sprinkled on some green fake moss that I often use in model building. Flex Bond is super sticky when wet, so all the sprinkles will stay in place forever, and the excess can just be removed. It also becomes transparent when dry, so the dust will just become part of the prop. Finally, I added some highlights to the handle using Paradise Blue Cos paint and some white acrylic paint for the gold highlights. And that pretty much covers all the paint I used. I covered the whole thing in satin Lucas spray to make it shine a lot more, but also to just seal it. And that's about it. And that concludes the build of this broken master sword. Once again, you cannot underestimate the power that a sealer has. I used the satin Lucas spray and you can just see how shiny it is. I actually made 2 of them. One of them is going to a friend called Mitsunade Cosplay and one of them to a YouTuber I work for called Call Me Carson. So I have none left. But I had a lot of fun making them and I have it on video, so it's with me forever. Almost all materials I used you can find at cosplayshop.be. I will leave a link in the description down below, so go check that out. They have a lot more than what I used in this video. If there's anything else you want to see us make here on this channel, you can just drop it in the comments down below and maybe we will. Thank you very much for watching and I will see you in the next one.